A 7th-grade boy in Sacred Heart School made this comment after the frightening destruction of the Twin Towers in New York City that killed nearly 3,000 people. "I feel safe here," he said. It was an amazing statement because most people were shocked in their shoes and scared to death. "You're not afraid?" he was asked. "No," he said, "I'm not afraid, because if the terrorists fly over Camden, they'll think that they have done it already." The Camden child could teach the proud missile makers great lessons. "Take my hand," the little Camden child says, "and walk with me. Walk my streets to school. Will your bombs save me? If you want to defend me, come and live on my block." O God Almighty and Mary mild, what savage world surrounds this child? What Eden this of smell and sewer? What Bethlehem of broken dream? What Nazareth of dirt and death? What the hell has happened here?
Marcus A. Hill, 16, shot to death. Darrell L. Miles, 19, shot to death. David Rose, 49, shot to death. James T. Corbett, Jr., 20, shot to death. Eric T. Conde, 30, shot to death. Quine Pollitt, 25, shot to death.
I called their names in the silent church, one by one. And one by one, the mother or the father or the relative or a chosen person from our congregation came forth to light a candle for the dead. 58 candles, 58 people standing, 58 people murdered in this bloody city since January 1st. The population is only 80,000. Realization of the magnitude of the slaughter pounded like a hammer in our hearts. We prayed. Tears glistening in the candle glow. Light leapt out of a terrible darkness. The courage of a mother facing the fact of a murdered child and her faith in God holding still. On her face, as William Butler Yeats would say, a terrible beauty is born. It's Christmas in Camden.
This is Cloudy Vasquez, my little brother. We were raised in Pollock. We've been living in Camden for many years. He died at 24, and we ain't never gonna forget about it. You know, it's my little brother, the rest of my family right there. You know, and he left a little boy and a little girl behind. Our job is to help them grow, remember their dad.
I've accepted what has happened. I'll never forget. That was my baby.
Okay.
But
Okay.
what happened, I'll never know. And for that, I'm grateful to God because maybe I don't need to know. And I'm fine with it.
Your children asking you, why is my dad not here? And I gotta answer these questions every night. And especially when I got two boys, beautiful boys that they love their dad and their dad loves them. And then now they asking me, why my dad is not here with us when he was always there for them. I gotta sit here and listen to them cry every night. It's not fair. It's not fair.
We miss him, you know. This is our first holiday without him. It's hard. So we're gonna be here to find out who did it.
My dad was a nice person. I just didn't want him to go like that. It was wrong. And I miss him and I love him. He got shot by Wawa in the head by an AK-47.
I drove into Camden, New Jersey on a summer afternoon in 1968 with all that I owned in the back seat of my Chevy Impala. I was 33. My outspoken opposition to the Vietnam War had landed me in Camden, and I have been here all these years. I write monthly letters as lifelines to the people who support Sacred Heart's many ministries: the school, the housing program, the medical clinic, the thrift store, the greenhouse. A friend called these letters my ministry. I had never thought of them in that way. To me, they are the music, sad and glad, of some of the things that happen around Sacred Heart. Camden, New Jersey sits here on the Delaware River with a 7-fathom waterway to the world. 3 hours by road to Washington, D.C., less than 2 hours to New York City, 10 minutes to Independence Hall, Philadelphia, and 0 seconds to God. I have grown to love this city that was, before I came, strong and greatly admired. Where Campbell stirred his steaming soups and a million wheels went round and round, here Whitman sang the whir in words and Victor snared the golden sounds. Today we are a sinking city, daily becoming poorer, in the wealthiest nation in the world. In my 40 years in Camden, I have seen unending acts of demolition, the downfall of wall and window. I have seen the cellar graves filled where the buildings used to be. Then the weeds grow. People stand and stare at the crucifixion of their dreams, looking for bits of hope in the sadness of the scene, for little resurrections in the rubble of it all.
The smell? It's terrible, damn it. I've been out here 19 years to smell that shit every day, right? Especially in the hot, sticky weather. The hot, sticky weather is bad. The smell is bad.
I had friends come up here, they said, oh my God, what's that smell? It's that come across the street or the electrical plant or the waste management.
Camden County sends down its sewage to be stored and treated in this neighborhood. 60 million gallons every day. Almost every toilet in the county is lined up for us, and so every flush of 400,000 people is sent to us, to Camden, to Camden, to Camden. And thus the raw sewage comes here, and its odors permeate our air, our noses, and the places where we live and breathe. It is sent here, and all the trash of the county is burned here as well, because anything that would lessen real estate values in the county is dumped on the poor in Camden. The whole thing is unjust and smacks of a mean indifference that has its roots in greed and racism.
It's basically true that in this area, everything that people didn't want, like the contents of their bathroom, the scrap that's thrown away, the trash that's thrown away would be burned. That's a paper place in there. There's a scrap yard in there. So all the refuse of a very throwaway society finds its home here among people. So you see, this probably one of the most violated areas, residential areas in America, in terms of a small area where people live and the horrendous amount of unwantables that are dumped here. It's just utterly incredible.
I go to Cherry Hill sometime, go shopping, and when I hit Carmelo Boulevard, I have to close my mouth like this. I didn't know about that bag coming into it here. But living like right here, right now, I can't smell anything. It's normal. But going somewhere else, coming back, I see people coming here like this. And it's a shame. They don't care because this is Camden. This is Camden.
They'll spend millions of dollars to preserve certain species of life for certain animals. But the human species, the quality of life, is not being preserved in this area.
That's it there, see? Yeah. There's a good shot of it over there. That's what burns the trash. The trash of the county comes in to be burned there. See, you got the sewage and up there, and then when they empty their trash, it comes down here too to be burned, right in that there. So that when you put the two together, then you begin to see the enormous injustice of it all, and the abuse of people, and how that's something that annoys me. By people wave flags and all that, but then they wouldn't. They would send down the trash to their own people, you know. And I don't know what patriotism means. Does patriotism mean, for some people, I think it's loving my lifestyle and my opportunity, rather than loving my country and my brothers and sisters.
Is there a message in the fact that Camden, once a colossal manufacturer of everything from battleships to toilet seats, is today a city of riverfront hills of scrap, waiting to be exported to China? No city of its size has higher mountains of brokenness. The presence of Camden's many merchants of scrap creates a market for the local hustlers who plunder any house unattended and rip out its pipes and its doors and windows and leave it to die, gutted and abandoned in a broken city.
Morning, Mayor. Another wonderful day in the city of Camden, and you know what? I just want to make one remark to reassure you. Randy Primus is the COO, who works in collaboration with this mayor. I am the mayor, Gwendolyn A. Face, in the city of Camden, and I know you as my people, my resident. You're not going to be forgotten. You will have a say, you will have a need, but I want you to remember, your health is the most important thing.
But understand, that the commitment from this government is that we care about our residents here, and your health is vitally important.
You can smell the, you know, I mean, that, you know, you can walk out into this environment and you can smell the problem. This is not a good thing to breathe. I don't breathe that when I'm in where it is that I live.
We will talk to you and find out your needs. So if you want to know the true answers, talk to Randy Primus and Mayor Faison. Would you do that for us?
Camden is an indictment of all levels of government, federal, state, county, and city, not to mention a society that waits for the God of profit to save the children. We are a long way from genuine solutions, yet we have to live in the meantime. God Bless America is not a prayer for Camden. Better, God Help America.
We're going to go straight down to Broadway, and this is down in the area where the New York shipyard used to be, and the industrial corridor of Camden, and also where Father Doyle is the pastor of Sacred Heart Church, and it is a community that has a school that is struggling to keep its community intact. In this neighborhood is also the Camden County Municipal Utilities Authority, which is the sewage treatment plant. And so, because all of the sewage in Camden County is processed here, there are odors for much of the time, particularly in the summertime. So as some folks like to say, when you flush your toilets in Cherry Hill and Haddonfield, it all comes to Camden. To our right is our resource recovery plant, our trash to steam plant. I also had the privilege of citing that when I was mayor. I got to cite prisons and trash to steam facilities, and I was a part of the city council when it was determined that Camden would house the CCMUA plant. So that's the sewage treatment. You'll see a sign, the historic village of Waterfront South. It is a small neighborhood that is struggling to hang on. But I think the reality is that they've lost the battle.
Save South Camden! Save South Camden! Save South Camden! Save South Camden!
Camden is a tough test of hope most of the time. Our struggle to save our neighborhood continues. Recently we gathered at the local Antioch Baptist Church and made demands to Randy Primus, the state-appointed chief operating officer. Wore down we are, run over we are, but we rise. We rise from the scrapyard dust and the boarded darkness where windows were. We rise.
We are not here to beg for your pity. We are tired of being disrespected, neglected, and deprived of our rights.
What we ask for here is to stop using Waterfront South as a dumping ground for industry which pollutes.
And we demand that the government clean up or close down industries that kill people.
I see a new pile, and we have a lot of piles in Waterfront South. It's a pile of injustice, on top of injustice, on top of injustice. Tom Corcoran said to me the other day, we are being punished for being a victim. Well, this is America, and we deserve the justice of remediation more than any other area in the United States.
But what has Father Doyle upset these days is the kind of development that Camden is getting. A new New Jersey State Penitentiary is going up right smack on the Delaware River, on prime land in the center of the city.
Nobody wanted the prison. Why did Camden get the prison? Camden got the prison because it couldn't balance its budget. The state said, great, Mother State said, oh, I'll balance your budget if you take the prison. Like that's what the mafia does, you know? That's loan sharking, I think.
And a county sewerage treatment plant is being built around the corner from his church.
80 million gallons a day. I see in my mind out there in the suburbs and all over Camden County, there are millions of toilet bowls. And the pipe is just set up for us. And every time you flush, you send to Camden, to Camden, to Camden, to Camden.
Add to the sewerage and the prison the fact that scrap has become the major export from the once thriving port of Camden, and Father Doyle sees an unholy trinity: the prison, the sewerage, and the junk.
The people went away and sent us back their rubbish. They sent us back their trash and their sewage and anything that they didn't want. And then they say to us, well, how come you're not coming back? Well, I want to say you got your foot on my neck. That's why I can't stand up. Our society, which is not compassionate and open to the poor, has to have a Camden to dump its poor, and then they'll ride by and say, oh my, and hold their nose, you know, because they have, I would like to, for Ash Wednesday, Harry Reasoner, for Ash Wednesday, I would like to get all this dirt that they say is in Camden and just put that on the foreheads of the society and say, think, you know, think, why is this place the way it is?
Shortly after we got back from filming in Camden,
well, I'm amazed, in a sense, at the fact that I'm looking at this 25 years later, and God knows I have to say about myself that I'm consistent. I'm saying the same words almost that I said 25 years ago about the city, the tragedy that continues. The drugs are worse today than they were when 60 Minutes was here. So some other things are better, but the same ache and struggle and difficulty and challenge is there for us. It's hard to think that that's true after a quarter of a century, but it is. It's quite amazing for me to realize that, to just feel that, and there's 25 years of my life gone, you know, and the struggle is still there. But in other sense, it's a good feeling to be faithful to the effort, and faithful to the people, and faithful to the presence, and just stand there and be there and not leave it. I'm thankful to God for that.
I invite you to come to the church of my childhood, an oats field in August in Ireland. There in my church, I often sat alone and listened to the whisper of the wind in the golden ears, and I heard the voice of God. There I invite you, where the sound is better than the oratory of the pulpits or the Vatican balconies. It is the temple of the tender touch of God, where you feel protected by a playful and good-natured God who will, if we trust, feed the needs of the world and our own as well.
I want to show you, like, if you look straight out here, of course the lake is Lough Gowna. It's 7 miles long, and it was like a focus of my childhood and growing up years. That's where we fished and went out in a boat and all of that. And then right in front of me, beyond this near 2-story house, beyond that, the fields that you can see are the Doyle fields, where I was born. So those fields all around there are our fields. And so I know them all. That's where I worked, and that's where I would work with my father and my grandfather and my brother. And each of those fields were like turned over by generations of Doyles before me, and every square inch has been, I would say, maybe sanctified, maybe is the best word, by the sweat and toil of generations of people who dug, you know, life out of those fields by hand. So it's very sacred land to me. They were they were very close to God, and they prayed that the yield would come in, and they'd go up to the church, to the priest, and get blessed salt. And my father would sprinkle a pinch of the blessed salt on every field that was planted, potatoes and oats and rye or whatever it was. But they asked the blessing of God upon the field before it grew. Their religion was sort of very integrated into the life they lived. It was not anything attached to it, or they didn't suddenly, you know, get cranked up into religion. It was just, and they didn't talk about religion. They just had these little prayers to say. They did it. Yeah, they just had it down about right in my book, anyway.
I went to the bog a few weeks ago and gathered turf for the fire. In one way or another, the bogland is a repository of stories. Ancient skeletons, human and animal, are sometimes preserved in the soft mass formed over thousands of years. Surely good storytelling always took place before turf fires on the hearth of old country kitchens. After all, in ancient Ireland, it was a greater crime to kill a poet than a king. The king could force his people into obedience, but the poet could enchant souls into song. My question, is the story in the quiet bog, or is it in the dreams of one with warm legs beside the hearth, gazing in the changing turf I cut, and building worlds with the mind before the ashes come, and all the dreams are gone?
I always say I survive in Camden because I'm anchored here. Because I know who I am. In Camden, like, I don't, it wouldn't tell me who I am. Like, I am there in a foreign place, and I'm happy because I can be of some service, and if something creative can be done, and I do love people, get tired of them sometimes, but so I need to come home and talk to the cows. But so I'm quite happy. I would say I'm happy there, but I wouldn't choose to be there if I wasn't doing what I'm doing.
In the church where I was baptized, I lit candles. The little ones, the same sort my father lit every Sunday after Mass. 6 he lit, 1 for each of his 5 children, and 1 for my mother and himself. I lit my candles for the children of Camden and prayed for them, as my father prayed for me. Sacred Heart School is a school with a heart that never missed a beat. It faced depression times and war times and glad times and sad times, but it kept going, and countless children have been helped to live good and generous lives.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The beauty of children and the verve and sparkling hope they bring to all of us are surely one of the most charming portraits of God's work in the world. The diversity of their color and culture adds to the goodness and universal innocence with which all children begin. Damage to a child through neglect or poverty is a loss without limit. I have trucks on my mind. The volume of them that tear by our church and school is horrendous. These trucks assault this little residential neighborhood day and night in 4 directions. Our dear vulnerable children have to contend with this, and also with the prostitutes that the trucks have attracted. I have to say that some of the big trucks on our streets are pickup trucks, not in make or size, but in the frequency of their stops to pick up the women for sale on our streets. One hot night, I walked from the front door of Sacred Heart Church down Ferry Avenue to the front door of the rectory. In that short distance, one of the women of the streets, and there are many, stopped me with a question I never heard in the seminary. "Your place or mine?" I answered with my own. "What is your place like?" She answered, "I have no electricity in the house, only candles."
I was on Shelton Avenue, Broadway and Shelton. He pulled up. He was in his plain clothes. Pink, blue and white flannel, short sleeve shirt, in his car. He pulls up and I said, what did I say to him? "Do you want a date?" I think I said, "You want a date? You just know I'm a priest." But I didn't know he was a priest. He gave me $3 and I don't know if that particular day, he drove me right down to Sacred Heart and gave me a big glass of milk and a sandwich. I was pregnant at the time.
Is it any wonder that I write? Around here there are poems and stories in every face and pothole. So far, among the this and the that of today, and it's only noon, I set up an appointment at the clinic for an unwed mother 19 years of age. I attended to the needs of a dead dog, and I had lunch with a prostitute enslaved to cocaine. I see men and women hardened by time and all washed out like the hills of Appalachia, and I wonder what were their first few years of life like, and what happened in the little places where they played. Right here on Broadway, on the blocks above and below Sacred Heart Church, the prostitutes adorn every corner in all weather. They are like hardy fisherwomen, casting their lines in the constant stream of traffic. Bodies for sale at all hours, day and night, for less than lunch. Poor drug-damaged women enslaved, owned, and abused. Surely a great sorrow for a church whose fountain source and inspiration is the heart, the Sacred Heart of Hearts.
I got molested and everything when I was young and got beat up when just a bunch of shit. So that turned my whole mind around, you know? Got a drug habit, a bad drug habit. Live in an abandoned house, work in the streets. Can't say no more, but I do.
I've watched Camden get poorer. Sadly enough, it is worse today than it was in 1968 when I came. the killing drug scene, the tragic murder rate. I watched the waste of the war economy and the unconscionable neglect of urban centers like Camden. Massive expenditures on national security while urban citizens are not secure. No attempt to count the urban body bags because those in them don't count.
It's a happy day for all of us. Deep, deep happiness. I remember that on November 21st, 2001, we gathered here to break ground for the building of this park and fishing pier. Today we're here to bless it, to break, not ground, but break water for the birth of hope and inspiration for the people of South Camden. Today, thanks be to God, let's go fishing for hope and inspiration and determination to rebuild Camden. God bless you all.
When I came to Camden and I tried to find the river, I couldn't get to the river. Now we have a park, and it is unique in all the world, sitting between a sewage treatment plant on the one side and a massive scrapyard that crushes cars into giblets on the other. A quixotic spot worthy of Cervantes, sitting among the air-polluting windmills of the area. Camden has three treasures that cannot be taken from it: its people, its river, and Walt Whitman. One of the interesting places in Sacred Heart Parish is that little hill in Harley Cemetery where Walt Whitman rests in the huge rock-hewn house that he designed himself. Like myself, Whitman was happy here. "I will never regret," he said one time, "that I was left over in Camden. It has brought me blessed returns." And to me the same, blessed returns. In this city, I often ache at the thought that the beauty of Eden is always God's intention for the window eyes of the children, not the ugliness of gutted shells where home should be. Listen to Whitman. "There was a child went forth every day, and the first object he looked upon, that object he became."
There's nothing in this whole area, buildings that were, in operation when I came are not in operation today. You have to get into a car and drive 2 miles to get a food store of any size. You couldn't buy a pair of socks in this neighborhood. You couldn't buy fresh vegetables. You couldn't buy a new car in all of Camden. There's not one movie theater in a city of 80,000 people, not one. You couldn't get a haircut in this neighborhood. The barber shops couldn't make it, they died. There's not a place for women to go and have their hair done, nails done, anything done. That's all true.
This is my papa, and this is his famous grill. It's like a magic stove.
Yeah, what's he cook on his grill?
He cooks chicken, he cooks ribs, he cooks hamburgers, he cooks steak, he cooks all kinds of stuff.
Beauty in Camden is not found in the scenes that I see, but in the human faces that I observe. You have to have imagination to sense the value of life. You have to dream. You have to see things in the mind, not in pure raw logic, but in the imagination. My eyes have been opened in Camden, and my soul has been strengthened. I celebrate that. I celebrate the heroic struggle of the people. 40 years ago, when I got to Camden, I didn't know what I was getting into. Now I do. The injustice of what has been done to it, the immensity of the brokenness of it, the little bits of hope rising from the cracks in it, the heart of Camden housing trying to fix it, the Sacred Heart School trying to lift it. A great place for the focus of imagination and faith.
First, you put the soil in it. Make sure it's flat all the way in.
Well, I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and when I first met Father Michael Doyle, I told him that I was a farmer. And soon enough, I learned about Father Michael's history as a farmer, poet, priest. And it was a great opportunity. He walked me around to these different gardens around the neighborhood and said, if we work together, we can create a beautiful space for the community and by the community.
It's over here too, right? Whoa.
Good job, good job. Excellent.
Green tomatoes.
We are the South Camden Community Gardeners. We're going to harvest the collard greens, and then we're going to, from the garden to the pot, and from the pot to our plate. Oh, goody.
Look, a sunflower now. Look, before it was a sunflower, and after.
Over 20 years ago, Sacred Heart bought its first building. Not lock, stock, and barrel, just it and its garbage. It was a gray brick house on Webster Street, and once upon a time it was a home with warmth and beauty and the dignity of life. Abandoned and abused, it was put on the auction block with an opening bid of $1,000. Nobody bid against me. There are 3,000 rutted, gutted, boarded-up buildings in this city. This row house is the 125th in the heart of Camden's shoestring rehabilitation effort. And yet, these bits of good are not anywhere enough to change the destructive environment that people live in here. The threat to the future of this nation is not in Iraq, but in the inner core of our deadly cities. If only we had a National Guard with hammers and saws, and Marines who did nothing but plumbing. I write asking you for a heartbeat. I write knowing what Seamus Heaney knew, that no poem or play or song can fully right a wrong. I write anyway. On a spring morning, we carried the cross through the streets of South Camden. The cross was light, surprisingly too light for the bloody way of the cross we were on. This is the Via Dolorosa, the path of sorrows in our Sacred Heart neighborhood. The day was Friday, Good Friday. We were praying at the many bloody spots inside a circle of 3 short blocks from our church, where 22 people have been murdered over the years.
Give us this day our daily bread.
More than at any other time, I was shattered by it all. This year, there are 24 murders in Camden. It's only May.
Deliver us from evil.
For this colossal tragedy, there is not the slightest thought of solutions on the national radar. At Ferry and Jackson, a man was murdered. At Broadway and Carl Miller Boulevard, a man and a woman were murdered. Nearby at the liquor store, a policeman was shot and killed. At 6th and Viola, Kevin Walls was shot. His mother bent beside her bleeding son and tried to say the 23rd Psalm in his ear. Though I walk in the valley of death, I fear no evil. There's plenty of fear at 6th and Viola. The most pathetic of urban shrines dot our neighborhood. Names scrawled on abandoned walls, sagging helium balloons, teddy bears, and soft toys, rows of bottles, empty and aching like attics. The mind goes from murdered young men to torn dreams and older eyes. It was a ragged, shattering scene of death and despair that I often saw before, but this time it tore my peace to shreds. I have loved a pen in my hands since I first made my mark with a burnt stick on a stone. Primitive, perhaps, human enough, nevertheless. I want my pen to dig golden wonders out of the common clay of our ordinary lives. One day, God sent a message from, of all places, Arlington Street, and it brightened up the doorway of my mind. On Arlington, in the awful heat, on that God-forsaken street without light or life, ugly urban decay at levels straining the imagination. 7 children were splashing in cascading water like shining wet dolphins in the sun. Somehow, they had hauled a discarded hot tub from Adventure Spas on Chelton Street, opened a fire hydrant, and the powerful pressure sent the water upwards on an old sheet of plywood into the tub and sent the children into ecstasies of delight in spite of all the awful misery around them. Nothing could stop their own adventure spa. Raid on, dump on, down on. Nothing could daunt the wild surge of their young lives and hopes. What is it about hope? Does its real inspiration only rise out of the tragic emptiness to take its pure and unsupported stand against all odds?
I'm going home.
The woman wails by the broken wall with urban pain upon her heart.
The darkness spreads its fearful veil, and turmoil rips her peace apart. O Camden, Camden, do not despair when hope is shattered by death and doubt. Your mother is still within your reach. Her milk will heal your blistered mouth. Let's make our sorrow into song and put our ardent wills in tune, a symphony of hearts and hands to restore a broken city soon.